Hello guys, welcome to another weekly breakdown video. Today I will be backtesting. I will be breaking down the third week of February. As you can see, as you can clearly see by the first glance, the market is not yet trending. You can argue the market is now a little bit showing some rejection from this supply zone on the weekly, and maybe it is gonna go to the downside. Maybe shoulda, woulda, coulda. We can't predict the market. Obviously we have to adapt to the condition in the market, so that is why I will not predict anything as of now. I will wait for what the market is doing and we'll see what's happening on the next candles. But as of now, as you can see, the trend is not clear on GBP USD, and this supplies on this. I have literally not changed anything. I didn't need to change anything in this from many weeks. As you can see, the market has done literally nothing. It was just consolidating, ranging, you can argue, and yeah. And also this was the supply zone which caused this change of character to the downside. Lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, and yeah, now heading towards the downside. So last week, after seeing this weekly candle, my bias was clearly bullish. And yeah, after a candle closure like this, obviously anyone would think that yep, now the market can go up and so on and so forth. So this was the week. So I was backtesting here, and now my bias for the next week is bullish, obviously because of how this candle closed on GBP USD, but the trend is not yet clear. And whenever the trend is not clear in GBP USD, what we do, we go to DXY. The drill is simple now. We go to DXY, and now we can clearly see on DXY the weekly fair value gap has been filled. 70 to 80% fair value gap has been filled and then rejected. We didn't predict nothing here, right? The market has gone, filled up this weekly fair value gap, and then now it's showing a rejection. So whenever something like this is happening in the market, that is when we start to look for sells. Obviously you can argue that from several weeks the market has been going up and up and up, but the weekly bias, I personally select my weekly bias according to how the previous weekly candle closes. That's simple. Keep it simple. The simple you trade, the better. The more complicated you do, it's the same thing. You are trading the same freaking thing. No need to make it complicated. Okay, so now going on the daily time frame. Obviously on the daily time frame, the market has now changed character to the downside. On the daily, as you can see, after ranging for about 2 months, not much, 2 months, now it has changed character to the downside, and it is now making a lower high, lower low, change of character, lower high, and you can argue that it might continue, but the market has not given us confirmation that it might do that. So until that, we will wait. And also if I draw my FIB tool, the retracement also happened to the equilibrium, but maybe the market has some more retracement to do, maybe. So also have to watch out for that. And going on Monday, my bias on GU, obviously my weekly bias is bullish, but my daily bias going on Monday is not clear on GU. Let's see on DXY. So looking on DXY, clearly you can see the market has been following a pattern. Rally, bears, rally, bears, rally, bears, rally. We can anticipate the market to continue the same thing, because we know in the markets human emotions repeat itself, right? Every time whenever there is a panic situation in the markets, the market tends to go to the opposite. Whatever the retail traders do, the market tends to go to the opposite, because that is how it works. The institutions doesn't want the retailers to win. That's why we are trading this strategy right here. So going on the daily time frame, the market is clearly broken structure to the upside. You can argue that this is a change of character, but I argue that the change of character happened here, and this was just a base and then again a rally. So going on Monday, even on DXY, my bias was not clear. As you can see here, there was a fair value gap here which can get filled easily. There was also a fair value gap to the downside, so Monday was very tricky to trade. And also my bias on Monday was not clear, so I guess I didn't took the trade. Let's see. Wow. Now let me show you what I was looking on for Monday. And also if I show you the news on Monday, there was no news. There was GBP BOE Gorman Bailey speaks on 11:30 p.m. which we don't care because it is very late in the day and we are gonna trade the London. So, and the rest of the week is full of news. As you can see, every day there is GBP news and also there is USD high impact news every single freaking day. So that's not high probability, and this week was a very high impact driven news. But news are always gonna be there, so you have to find a way to take trades or look for opportunities even if there is news. So keeping that in mind, now we go to look for on Forex Factory, sorry, Forex calendar, my FX books calendar, and Monday there was no news. So this is when I go to the lower time frames, and if the daily bias is not clear, you know what I do, I go with the weekly bias. So my weekly bias was bullish, my weekly bias on GU was bullish. So I don't know if I look for buys. Here you can see my weekly bias was bullish, daily bias was not clear, so obviously I will go with the weekly bias. Waited for the Asian range to close. I will not show you the DXY as always because I will make, if I took any trade, I will make a separate video for that. So this was where the market opened on 3:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, right? So according to how the Asian range closed, we have to adapt our demand zones or supply zones as we know. So this was a weak M15 demand. Why this was weak? Because this didn't cause any break of structure. As you can see, you can argue this is a break of structure, but the market was again bullish from here, right? So that's why this was a weak M15, and also I lost the trade from there, I guess. Yep, the market took the Asian high, took the previous week high and day high so early on, so it was low probability, but I took the trade anyways because I'm backtesting, and I also marked this H1 demand zone on the H1 time frame. So M15 lost the trade, but you know what, the market came down to our demand zone exactly at New York session. If you lost a trade on London, that doesn't mean that New York can't play out. New York also can play out. This trade was the example. Literally whatever I've lost here, I would have made back it here. This is the reason why you should only trade in your kill zone timing. Look at this. This was London kill zone. Didn't go the trade on kill zone, didn't do the trade, done. So going on New York, this was the kill zone. So got the trade on the kill zone, literally 1:4, I guess. It was a 1:4 risk to reward. Yep, it was a 1:4 risk to reward. Beautiful trade right there. Yeah, trades like this will appear, so you have to be ready to take them. So now going on Tuesday. So on Monday my bias was not clear. That is the reason why I was looking for buys, because obviously I will go with the weekly bias if the daily bias is not clear. And now going on Tuesday, even now my bias is not clear. As you can see, the daily candle is not a decision candle, it is an indecision. Whereas even on DXY, the bias was not clear. And on Tuesday there was CPI. There was USD CPI news, as you can see, core CPI, Clement count change. So a lot of news on Tuesday. So obviously I would have not traded Tuesday. But if I would look for something, that would be, let me see what I was looking for. And sorry, also on DXY there are fair value gaps to the upside and the downside, so yep, keep that in mind. On GU the bias is not clear, so now we go to the 4 hourly to look for price action, and you can see the market has been trending down, lower highs, lower lows. This is the lower high, you can argue, boom, made the move, and it is making a resistance here. This supply zone is also used as resistance right here. The market is unable to break past this point, so we can also anticipate that this resistance is getting respected. We don't try to support resistance, but obviously we can use them to understand the conditions in the market if it's helping us. So yep, so that is when on Wednesday also I have drawn the previous day low and high to analyze the markets, yeah, on Monday, because I took the trade but I didn't journal. You may argue, why you are not journaling these kind of trades? Because the market is not clear right here, right? The bias is not clear. Maybe in live markets I would have not taken this trade anyway. So that is the reason I'm patiently waiting for the market to catch a trend and trend, so that I can journal the trades and I can complete my 100 back tests. So whereas on Tuesday I waited for the Asian range to close. Maybe I was not looking for anything. Yep, on Tuesday I was not looking for anything because there was nothing to look for. My bias was not clear, and also there was huge high impact news, Clement count change and core CPI. So GBP there was news on 12:30. So this is when on 12:30 the Clement count change news came in GBP's favor. as you can see, a huge bullish candle, and trading after a news candle like that is very tricky, because you could have you can see, you might argue that there was a fair value gap here, but the fair value gap didn't got filled. And fair value gap trades are always tricky, because you don't know where to move, how much the price will fill up the fair value gap, right? It has filled only 10%. Might be it might have gone and filled up more before going up, so that might be the possibility right there. So it was very tricky to trade, and literally waited for CPI, and CPI always does something like this. It was a 90 pips CPI, as you can see. If I draw from here till here, it was a 93 pips CPI news, and yeah, that was very interesting. So now going on Wednesday, this week I didn't took any trade because of high impact news and the bias. So now, as you can see, on Wednesday my bias is clear bearish, and it's not aligning with the weekly bias, because the weekly bias is bullish. Whereas on DXY, it has literally gone up lots. The CPI news literally came on in the dollar favor. As you can see, it made a huge move, but obviously the market can continue to go up or can come and rebalance the price. We cannot predict, right? So it is best to wait for the market to show us what it's going to do. And also you can argue that it has filled up this much of the fair value gap to the upside, so it also makes sense to go up and fill up this fair value gap and attract to this supply zone. So obviously we will go with the trend. So on Wednesday I was looking for sells on GBP USD, whereas on Wednesday there was CPI news on GBP, and we don't trade CPIs, as you know, but let's see. And on the 4 hourly, if I show you the price action, on the 4 hourly, literally the market was trending. Even now it's trending between these zones. You can argue there was a change of character here, again a change of character to the downside, so there was also a supply zone right here, which I have marked, I believe. I haven't marked this supply zone because it is very far away, and also there is a huge fair value gap. Who knows what the market is up to, right? So that is why I wait for the Asian range to close, and the Asian range did something like this. So obviously if the Asian range did something like that, I'll go to the M15, so I'll mark the closest zone, which there wasn't any. So what I did, I marked this previous structural liquidity, so I anticipated the market to go up, sweep the previous structural liquidity, sweep the Asian high, and then make the move to the downside, as my bias was bearish. So that's what exactly happened. But there was high impact news, so I didn't do the trade. And also this CPI news was a 49 pips. So USD news does more effect to the markets than GBP news. As you can see, GBP CPI was 49 pips, whereas USD CPI was 90 pips. So that's a lot of difference right there. So after this I didn't took the trade because I didn't want to force a trade. As you can see, we didn't got any opportunity, and the fair value gap also didn't got filled, I guess, and now going on Thursday, my bias is still bearish on GBP USD, but it's not aligning with the weekly bias yet, so we have to keep that in mind. And also on Thursday, it's literally going down. It has closed as a bearish candle, whereas on the dollar, is also bearish. Sometimes there will be conditions in the market where GBP and USD, the dollar, will do similar things, right? So that is when we go to the euro to confirm our bias, and whichever the euro is supporting, we will trade with that zone, or we will not trade. So on looking at the DXY, it makes sense to go down and fill up some of the fair value gap now. Before it was a rebalance in price, now it's a fair value gap, so it can go and fill up the fair value gap before continuing to the upside. Whereas on GBP USD also it's bearish. So now we go to Euro USD to confirm the bias, and on Euro USD there is a fair value gap to the upside, so it can go and fill up that fair value gap before continuing to the downside. And this is when I was interested for nothing, I guess. What did I look for? I forgot. Let's see. I marked this H1 fair value gap, which was made on CPI. CPIs always make the fair value gaps because of their high impact. And obviously if I was looking for something that was sells, as you guys know, I've told you, and there was no supply zones also to trade from. There was no supply zones near the Asian range. You can see there was only this fair value gap, so I also didn't mark any supply zones. So this might be a continuation model, I anticipated. And also on Thursday there was a lot of news. GDP core retail sales. Wow. So GDP core retail sales was a high impact news. It is a high impact news. So also on Thursday I didn't took the trade. As you can see, the market did fuck all, and that is when this week was literally, some weeks will be like this. Every day there will be news, and at the timing of your trade, no problem, sit in your hands. Not trading is trading. If you can wait for the conditions to get well and the market to get well, that is when you become profitable, right? So this is how the Thursday candle closed. So Friday, obviously now the bias is aligning with the weekly bias being bullish, and might be we can look for buys on Friday. Whereas on the dollar, it's bearish clearly. It has filled up the daily fair value gap to the T and not shown any signs of rejection. This fair value gap has been filled to the T, no signs of rejection, so we can also anticipate this is gonna continue to the downside. So going on Friday, my bias was bullish on GBP USD. Yeah, that was what it was. And also here we can clearly see there is a fair value gap here on the H4. There is a fair value gap, the closest fair value gap. I marked the closest fair value gaps, as you guys know. And also the market is trending down, making lower highs and lower lows. You can also argue this is the supply zone on the 4 hourly. It can have a move from here. Yep, I have seen this a gazillion of times, and also we have to keep this concept in mind in the live markets. As you can see on the 4 hourly, this is the supply. The lower high is completely arrived to the supply zone on the 4 hourly, and now it can have a move. But this is more of a swing trading concept than an intraday, so that's why I'm not teaching you guys in detail. But if you want, you can let me know. And now this is the H4 fair value gap, right? So there is also a H1 demand. If I'm looking for buys, there is a fair value gap aligning with demand, higher time frame fair value gap aligning with lower time frame demand. So there is always a very good zone to trade from, as I have told to you guys, right? So wait for the Asian range to close. The Asian range was a little bigger than normal. As you can see, it was a 23 pips. Bro, before the 23 pip Asian range was bigger, but nowadays it's 100 pips, 120 pips. Donald Trump, bro. Good. So obviously the H4 fair value gap got filled, and after the Asian range closed, something like that, I went to the lower time frames. Till then there was no zones to trade from. I can argue with you guys that I was looking for buys from this sort of demand, but I don't know why I have deleted. And also on Friday there was PPI news, retail sales and core PPI on Friday. So yep, it was very tricky, very tricky. So whole week there was news, and literally I didn't took any trade. No problem. 1 week you waited patiently, next week you get rewarded for it. You get rewarded for your patience in the market. You get that, bro. That's it. That's how the profitable traders are profitable. If you want to trade every single day, going to the markets, and you are literally attaching yourself with the trades, getting emotional, no, don't get emotional. Only take the trades in which your bias, in your session, on your timing. Win, lose, doesn't matter. Rinse, repeat. It's every failure is data, and every mistake is feedback. If you adapt to that mindset, you will be you will go very far in this business. So yeah, that was the weekly breakdown. Now going to the next week, let's see what I'm looking for, and I'll come back with a new video. Stay tuned.